What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ripstop on the Record. This is a bonus episode for episode 47. This is part 2. We are doing Ask Us Anything, or answering maker questions. If you want to hear part 1, go back to episode 47, which was released on July 6th. As for this episode, we have 4 topics coming up today, including a few questions about Dyneema, a few questions about, I think, sewing machines, a few questions about making tips and specific maker questions, and then we have an other section just to answer a few random questions that we thought were worthwhile. So, James, on the episode here today.
And me, Mr. Carter.
And Isaac.
No one's ever called you Mr. Carter.
Actually, they have.
They?
Yeah.
Who?
Children. Okay. Let me explain this. So I had to do my senior project. I did it for like a PE class, and I was studying like exercise science in kids, and if they get like CTE from playing football or something.
Yeah.
So I was the PE coach for like a couple months. So yeah, called me Mr. Carter.
That's okay. That makes sense.
And they said, "Tell me, where have you been around the world?" And now I'm back again.
If you get it, let Carter know. Also,
song, Isaac.
If you, that's true. He didn't hear that back in high school. But if you like our podcast as a whole, you should rate, subscribe, like, comment. Let us know. We know if you like this, and we know to continue to do more if you give us those fine accolades on things like Spotify and iTunes. So let us know, please. It helps a ton, and it'll help you in return a ton if you let us know. So definitely do that. All right, let's get to it. Section 1 is all about Dyneema. First question is from somebody named Grady. Grady asks, is there some place to explain the differences in the fabrics that you have in Dyneema?
Complex question. Thank you, Grady. Yes, no, and soon. So the yes part is if you go and check out our product pages, they do give a brief characteristic breakdown of the different variants. We have some content about that. But we also have a place on the website that's resources. So you can click on that and go to the materials guide library. And there is a section there for a DCF ebook, which we are almost done with. So it is coming soon, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. But that will basically break down everything from how the fiber is created in some ways, all the way to the differences between the different materials, what type of needle to use. All that stuff is there or will be there. So check that out. And then in the short term, if you have any specific questions, like if you're trying to figure out the difference between 0.8 and 1.0 and which one you should use, just shoot us a message on social media or through our ticketing system, and we'll definitely help you out.
Cool. Next question is from Dylan. DCF and other UHMW PE fabrics have been taking ultralight hiking by storm in the last few years. DCF backpacks and tents are becoming almost mainstream in some circles, and they are starting to be incorporated into traditional non-ultralight products. What are the next steps for the evolution of DCF usage in the outdoor industry?
That's a really good question, Dylan. I think the first part of the answer is hopefully the price will come down. Up until this point, anything made with DCF or fabrics woven with Dyneema have been astronomically expensive. So I'm hoping that, as we start to see more of the bio-based Dyneema coming out and, with DSM ramping up their production, I'm really hoping that we'll see those prices come down. And then further than that, I think we're going to start to see more UHMWPE fiber and fabric used in other industries. So right now it's being used in things like body armor and things like rope and ballistics, things like that. I think we're just going to see more of that fiber being used in other industries. So
I hope we start to see it more in fabrics that have a super high abrasion resistance, like UVX40 and some stuff that kind of answer the questions that DCF specifically has been asked with, like abrasion resistance and durability and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Some things that are a little heavier weight, but have trade-off
exactly
specs.
All right, next question in this segment is from Reddit user Thelonious Drunk. Great username. Question is, will you bring back the orange Dyneema in a lighter weight?
Thank you, Mr. Drunk. So, yes, no, maybe. It seems like I've said this before. Probably not, to answer the question. If you're referring to, so there's a few different orange Dyneemas that we've had. We used to have, or there used to be a stock 2.92 hybrid that had an orange face. We will not be carrying that. There's also a .67, which we currently have in clear and camo, that also came in an orange. We probably won't be stocking that again, and I'll explain why in a second. And then we also had an orange TPU material that we will also not be stocking, and that's because those were exclusive products from DSM that they allowed us to sell in something that we call Dyneema Demo Days, which was like a super exclusive thing where it's like whatever we had, we sold. So unfortunately, most of those won't be coming back unless we have extremely high demand. But if you're just looking for anything 1.0 and above, you can also custom print that right now on the website in any of like 1,341 colors that you want. So if there's a particular orange out of those Pantones, you can go there for that. So if you were looking for one of the ones I mentioned that we won't bring back, I'm very sorry, but hopefully you just need some 5.0 in orange, in which case we got that.
One of the fabrics that was brought on at Dyneema Demo Days was this, I don't remember the weight, but it was like a 2 ounce or 3 ounce TPU coated woven with Dyneema, and it was wild. And if you want any of that, then you have to ask Isaac. It's all in a shed out back.
Yeah, he's got it stockpiled. So he lives at 144. I'm just kidding.
I'm just holding on to it, safekeeping.
It's like it's going to be the next thing after crypto is going to be orange Dyneema, and he's going to be rich.
You know that place? I think it's in Iceland that has the seed of every plant in the world, where it's like in case the world burns, they can still repopulate the Earth's plants. That's Isaac, but with
Orange
Dyneema. Yeah,
TPU coated.
just orange TPU. Next question is from Robinson. I've been wanting to sew a lightweight, bomb-proof hiking jacket. Is there a breathable, not waterproof, woven Dyneema fabric out there? If so, why is it so difficult to track down? I feel like I can't be the only one who'd love to have it for basic outdoor clothing applications.
That's a good question. Carter, did you have something you wanted to mention?
Yes. So currently, no, there isn't anything that lightweight. However, speaking of Dyneema Demo Days, we actually had a 1.2 ounce breathable, hybridized nylon 6.6 ripstop that had a Dyneema grid. I don't want to reveal too many secrets, but that is definitely something that we are interested in bringing back or adding something similar to that, because I agree that there are some pretty cool trade-offs in maybe trade-offs isn't the right. There are pretty good attributes that you can get by adding in UHMWPE or Dyneema fiber into.
Should have practiced it before.
I should have practiced it before my. The problem is that if you just put a small little ripstop grid of that, it doesn't do that much for the abrasion or anything. So we would have to add more than that, which just becomes expensive. So I still want to bring something on, and we will bring something on in that category, but it takes a little bit of R&D to find something that both has the attributes that we want it to have, so it's actually worth doing, and then also making sure that we don't make something that costs like $98 a half yard or something, which no one is going to want.
Because at a concept, that is the worry about every ultralight rain jacket or wind jacket, right? That you can snag it just by sneezing on it. So from a concept, you could have a jacket that just wasn't that unreliable, then it would be amazing, right? That's kind of what they're getting at.
Yeah, I think they're looking for, they say it, lightweight and bomb proof, which normally doesn't go together.
Yeah.
So it's trying to figure out how to do that while not relying on a coating to do it, because normally the way that you get really lightweight rain jackets and stuff to be tough is by putting a really high quality silicone coating on there that enhances the abrasion and tear strength. But if you want it to be breathable, then you're going to have to rely on the fiber content more.
Yeah. Cool. That wraps it up for our Dyneema segment. Now we're on to thread and needle. First question is from Ben T. Thanks for all your support for the community. My question is, I have no idea what makes a good thread for a project. What are some basic things to consider when picking a sewing thread? Fabric type determines thread thickness, maybe, UV resistance, etc. Should I worry about getting the perfect thread for the job, or is there some room to wiggle? What consequences for the wrong thread? Thanks. Love the last episode. thanks for the kind shout out, Ben. We really appreciate you listening.
And if you didn't review it, then we're going to find you. Please review. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks for listening. But Isaac, as
so aggressive.
I'm serious about this. I was told before the recording that reviews are the number one thing that we need, and I'm going to do my part as a member of this team to make sure that happens.
You're not
Ben.
wrong. Anyhow, Ben, I think you're probably really wonderful, despite what Carter thinks. But Isaac, you
don't know that he didn't review it. You're assuming he didn't. You're the bad guy.
Anyways, Ben, going back to your question. So I think for the most part, most people use polyester thread for outdoor applications, simply because polyester thread has higher UV resistance than cotton, which is most of what you're going to find at like your Joann's or typical fabric store. And I don't even know if nylon thread is a thing. Have you ever?
Yeah, it's a thing. It's just not. I mean, it's still really strong. I mean, it has the same properties that we talked about previously with poly and nylon.
Yeah. Okay, but polyester, I think, is just more popular, and that's going to be like all of the thread that we sell. So whether it's Mara 70 or Tera 80, and then there's Mara 100 too. We don't sell that right now, but all of those threads are going to be great for outdoor applications. And then a lot of our newer fabrics, you'll find a thread needle guide in the specs tab. And then, that'll give you your starting point for what size needle to use and what size thread to use. So if you honestly, I use Mara 70 for just about everything. There's not a whole lot that you need to go up in size for, unless you're using like 1000E Cordura.
I was gonna say, well, that's even from like 1000E Cordura to like 0.66 membrane. It's pretty much you use the same.
So if you just stick with Mara 70, you'll probably be good. Or if you want it on a small cone, you can get Tera 80. Yeah. Were there any other parts of that question? Consequences for using the wrong thread? It'll fail miserably.
Well, Ben's really just getting the heat of it here. The only consequence would be if you don't use a synthetic thread of some sort, you will eventually have it dry rot.
Yeah.
And
it'll fail miserably.
Yeah. Other than that, as long as you're using something with polyester, and the next question perhaps will answer some of this a little more.
One other thing too that you mentioned, I think last time we did this, was just matching your thread and needle. So like if you do need to change your thread size dramatically, just make sure you also change your needle size, because the Isla size is going to be a bit different. But for 12, or for not 12, but for Mara 70, your standard needles are going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go ahead and read me the next question, and I can get into that
so,
more.
Reddit user Chusnus. It kind of sounds like something that you would walk in and call everybody as you walk into work. Like, what's up, Chusnus? You just come up with a new name every day, Carter.
Sounds dirty.
Reddit user Chusnus asks or says, I've been doing MYOG for a few months, and I have definitely not been using the, quote, correct needle. Using whatever came with the machine we were gifted. Will this affect durability in the long term? I haven't noticed anything yet. I expect things to rip or tear more easily due to an incorrect needle. I've been sewing 1/1 Hyper D. I don't think that's 1 ounce Hyper D and Hyper D 300 with webbing. So doing some cool stuff, but the gist of it is using the correct needle.
If you got through the project and it's holding up, it's probably fine. I definitely think that that's something that a lot of, and rightfully so, people when they're starting out are really apprehensive about getting the right needle and thread. But it's probably fine. I would say that the main thing to know is that if you're using a really light fabric, you might want to use a smaller thread, and in terms a smaller needle. Other than that, like these guys said, Mara 70 in a size 12 needle is going to be totally fine. Sharp is ideal. Universal is probably what came with your machine. That's like a hybrid between ballpoint and sharp. Also probably fine. Your projects are gonna be totally cool. If you do experience some weird problems, that could be one place to start to change over and see if that makes a difference. But it should be cool.
The only other thing to keep in mind is if you were gifted a machine that was secondhand and that needle had been used for who knows how long beforehand, you probably need to change that needle. It's a good idea to change your needle every, I don't know, like 5 or 6 projects.
That's what I was going to say. That's something I remember from our episode with Aaron, which we just re-released maybe 3 episodes ago, the sewing machine mechanic. But it was kind of a reminder. I'm like, oh yeah, I just never change my needle enough. It's kind of, you can't go wrong by doing it more frequently than not. It's just going to create a cleaner project in the end. All right, last question in the thread and needle section is from Reddit user So Dave.
He's all right.
I would say he's probably like so I guess. This question is pretty solid though. The question is, what is the best thread for making a 1000D Cordura backpack with molly webbing on the outside? And I don't know. Actually, are you So Dave? Because this kind of sounds like your type of project.
Dude, I'm So Dave, as well as
I think he's actually top tier.
Thelonious Drunk.
Thelonious Drunk, yeah.
Isaac has asked every question in the whole. He just submits them all. He has a bunch of burner accounts on Reddit.
I think
that would be a good way to influence our podcast, though.
That's true. Yeah. Can you also actually comment and rate us as well on your burner accounts?
No, I can't do that. Sorry.
He's been T.
Anyways, so best thread for making 1000D Cordura backpack with molly webbing on the outside. Like we said before, I would probably recommend going with TERA 80, just because it's going to be a little bit heavier weight than the Mara 70, and even if you have Mara 70, that's probably going to work. But yeah, I just made a 1000D Cordura sandbag not that long ago, and I'm pretty sure the thread we have on that machine is close to TERA 80, right?
So in Gutermann standards, the higher number is the smaller
lower text.
So the thread that's on there is American and Eford Permacore thread, and I think it's Tex 40, and I think that TERA 80 is Tex 35. So that
if I had that backwards this entire time,
so it's 70.
What did you say?
I said Mara 70 is probably the best for everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Mara 70 would be Tex 40. In which case, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, the only difference in thread is that some of them are stiffer than others. Like I find Mara 7 to be a very stiff thread, so it's great for top stitching. But like TERA 80 is a little bit more flexible, so I tend to use that whenever I'm using like a more flexible material. But anyways, I don't know what I was talking about or where I am. Who are you?
We're on it. Either of the threads that we have on our website are going to do well for just about everything. You're going to be hard fought to go wrong with either one of those, no matter what your project, especially for all of our fabrics.
And there's also Mara 50 that we carry, which is a little bit heavier. Just use the size 16 needle instead of the 14 or the 12. And that's also, if you want to make sure, like if you're worried about it falling apart, use that combination. You will be totally fine. Just keep in mind that a bigger needle means a bigger hole. So,
not to beat this too heavily, but on our specs tab on the product page itself, if you click specs and scroll down, there's a particular section that says recommended thread and needle for all new products. We haven't gone back and corrected those for every one of the old products, I don't think, but especially on new products released in the last 6 months or so, and ones going forward, you can look at the recommended thread and needle size for those individual fabrics. But also for new product releases, the marketing team creates graphics and stuff to talk about specific thread and needle size for those. So for the Ultra ebook and the DCF ebook, there will be recommended thread needle sizes for all of those coming in the future days as well. Okay, next section is about making questions. These are questions regarding to like specific applications or technical things about making a project. So separate from the sewing machine and separate from fabric specifications, these will be about making a project, broadly speaking. First question is from Christian. I have a hammock I would like to add a detachable zippered bug net to. I haven't done it as I'm afraid that I will ruin the hammock. How can this be done? Any tips for what to consider before or during the sewing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best resource by far for this is going to be hammockforums.net. You don't have to be a member on there to read most of the stuff. You could actually just type into Google, add detachable zippered bug net to hammock, and then hammock forums, and you will find lots of different people that have done it different ways. There are also some different YouTubers that have done that, so you can search there as well. We'll try to include some links to do that in the, what's it called now? The bio, the show notes, I guess.
Notes, yeah.
Description. Yeah, I think that the main thing to consider is that you need to plan it out, right? Because a bug net needs to match in a hammock, it needs to like match the perimeter of the edges, and then you also need to have a way to cover the ends of the bug net. So normally people put like a little triangle up at the top. There are just some things to consider, but it's not difficult. I've done it lots of times, and the best thing I could recommend would be to go to Hammock Forms, find one of the people that have already created like a basic pattern for it, and then just try it out. If you already have a finished hammock, which I think is what you said, then it won't be as clean, but you already have a step done in that the sides are hemmed, so you could really just sew that directly onto the zipper. You don't have to do anything fancy because you already have a closed edge on the perimeter, so that's a good place to start. Yeah.
Next question is from Ed. I'm going to read into this question a little bit, Ed, but what he asks is, or what they ask, shouldn't assume, with lots of DIY projects requiring a rolled hem, how do you folks feel about a beginner using a rolled hem presser foot?
Short answer, I hate them. I've never had good success with a rolled hem presser foot. I just find that I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's user error.
It's me too. I think the people that typically use those are highly, highly, highly experienced, like seamstresses and people that are using them all the time. Like they use those when they're making, like when Eno makes their hammocks, they're using that attachment on an industrial machine, and they've done it for hundreds of thousands of yards. I also agree with you, Isaac, in that anytime I've tried one, I have industrial ones. I have ones on my regular Singer machine. Once you just fold over the hem a couple of times, it's just easier that way for me too. So
I was going to say though, Carter sent me a TikTok or maybe an Instagram reel over the weekend.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, so basically this person took a piece of like cardstock basically, and they measured out their seam width and then folded it over twice, and then they like lined up the fabric with the edge of the cardstock and then folded the fabric over with the cardstock, and then like attached that in front of their
like taped it down, like double-sided tape.
And that looked like it could work pretty well.
That was cool.
I think one of the differences there is that you could actually like press down on it while you were sewing, so you make sure that the fold stays where it is, whereas with an attachment you're like hands off and just hoping that it rolls correctly. For a lot of the material, that's probably great on like canvas, but even as someone who's sewn a lot, whenever I've tried to do that with like 1.0 Hyper D or something lighter than that, it just ends up not folding, and then you maybe get really upset, and then maybe you put a hole in the drywall, and then maybe your dad makes you patch it, and then maybe you cry. But that's just not my experience at all.
But you learn a good skill by putting a patch in drywall.
Yeah,
it all works out.
Yeah, I started a handyman business after that.
Yeah,
thanks, Dad.
There's a lot to be said about like practicing good technique for a rolled hem as well, like clips, double-sided tape. Like there's some other good ways out there that you can find a consistent stream with a rolled hem, but it is really important. It's a great hem to have handy. Yeah. Next question. Carol says, what are the best resources for learning about and making a sleeping hammock?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about Christian's question, but one thing I'll say more specifically is for like how to use a hammock and like the best ways to, like, once you make it, how to set everything up and get oriented. Shug on YouTube is by far the best place. He is a maker. He also has been like on a member of Hammock Forms since, I don't even know, probably 12 years or 13 years. So that's just an awesome place. He has different playlists for how to do hammocks for noobs. It's really awesome. I would check that out. And then again, check out Hammock Forms for the actual how to make a hammock. Or, it's another one of those things where you just type it into YouTube. You'll find something that it's pretty much a rectangle with some hems on it. So there are lots of people that can show you how to do it. We have a video on it that Kyle stars in with our netless hammock kit, and he'll show you how to do it on there as well.
All right. K.M. Buckley says, it's probably been asked before, but tips and tricks for keeping thread from bunching up when sewing sil nylon. So for anyone unknowing, lighter weight fabrics, especially slippery ones, can kind of get eaten by the feed dogs quite a bit and get choked up in kind of under your presser foot.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is if you have an adjustable, like if you can adjust the tension on your presser foot, make sure that's set correctly. And then also it really helps to kind of pull on the fabric as it's exiting the presser foot. Don't yeet it. Don't you know what I mean? Don't pull it really hard, but just kind of thread it through and make sure that back is coming out nice and straight.
You're sort of encouraging it out.
Yeah, encouraging. That's a good word. Yeah. I was at a loss for words there. But
we have a video called "How to Sew with Lightweight Fabrics," and in that video, we do a little bit about kind of we show how you could run a stitch with like tissue paper or something in between the layers as well. Have you ever done that before, Isaac?
I have not.
It worked out fairly
well. I feel like
well.
I wouldn't have the patience to then like go back and pick it out of the seam.
That's fair. It does work out pretty well, though. It provides some stiffness and some rigidity while feeding the stitch compared to just the two fabrics that normally have no rigidity.
Usually when I see this the most often, it's people that have zigzag throat plate machines, because the hole in the throat plate is so much wider that, especially if you don't have a sharp needle, you're like just jabbing the material in. So if your machine has an option to get a replacement throat plate that just has the single hole, that can also be really helpful if you're just unable to get it to work. But honestly, with Isaac's tip of just, making sure that everything's straight, making sure your tension is at a good spot, making sure that your stitch length is not really like way too small, I haven't had that many issues once I just felt comfortable and confident in what I was doing. So just take some scraps of steel nylon and sew them until you feel good about it, and I think you'll probably find that you're in a better spot. There are some tricks, but you probably won't need them once you just have the confidence.
All right, next question is from Chris. Cutting material. Yeah, hold on. I read that wrong. Well, yeah, no. Cutting material. Sounds basic, but dang, I struggle with this simple task, especially with slippery materials. Please explain or give tips for seam allowance when cutting fabric. Thanks. I make fishing stuff using different fabrics and components from your shop. I can't tell you how many yards of material I've wasted because my initial cuts were crooked.
Yeah, I feel you on this one, Chris. I hate cutting. And I think this is the bane of all MYOGers, simply because it takes up so much time and everybody hates doing it. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. Most people hate doing it.
I haven't met somebody that likes it yet.
Yeah. Okay, so to your question, please explain, give tips for seam allowance when cutting fabric. So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for here, but I'll say so it's similar to any cutting, right? When you're doing like carpentry, if you're measuring and then marking and then cutting, just make sure that you cut, in the same spot all the time. So if you're marking and then you cut on the line, make sure you're consistent with that throughout the entire process, or you're cutting on the inside of the line or the outside of the line. Just figure out what you're going to do and cut that way the entire time. And then next, as far as suggestions, so Avery, the producer of the podcast, she brought down Cricut Maker a few weeks ago when she came into the shop, and that's kind of like revolutionized cutting for us in our little makerspace here, because like when you just have a small project or something simple that you can like put on that will fit onto an 11 and a half by like, what was it, 2 feet long?
Yeah, maybe
11 and a half by 2 feet long mat. You can just upload it to the Cricut software, and then it cuts it out for you with the little rotary wheel. It's super convenient. So I would definitely recommend that if you're doing smaller cuts often.
I would also say, because one thing that the Cricut's really, really precise, so it'll get you the perfect shape that you want. However, the Cricut cannot remind you that you have a seam allowance to add in there as well. Yeah. So just get really, measure, if you don't know what it is, measure your presser foot and find out exactly what the distance is, so you know that you always have to add a 1/4 inch, or if you need it big, add 1/2 inch, or just know what your seam allowance is and then go into that. And if you just mentally, I sketch out all my projects on a piece of paper, and I've just started writing above where the cuts I'm going to need, just plus 1/2 inch or whatever my seam allowance is. So I always remember to add 1/2 inch to those pieces. You can always cut down. You can't always add, your seam allowance. So just always add your 1/2 inch to wherever you're running, and you should be okay. Obviously, that does get more complicated with more complex projects and where you're mounting them, and if it's the right seam allowance. But at the very least, if you just add a 1/2 inch to like all your sides, you can normally cut it down or figure it out from there.
Yeah, you can also look into making like pattern
generator stuff.
No, not pattern generator. What am I trying to think? So in like apparel, you have like a pattern block, right? So basically, you would put that down on your fabric and then trace around it. A template, like you can make, if you're making multiple cuts of the same thing over and over again, you could just make a template out of thick cardboard or even like acrylic if you're really making a lot of cuts. That way, you have the same dimensions every time.
Good question, Chris. That got us going. All right. Last question from this segment is from Sally. Sally says, I want to make lightweight pull-on pants and shirt to wear during hiking. Read that wrong. I want to make lightweight pull-on pants and shirt to wear hiking during no seams season. So breathable but bug-proof. What is the best fabric for that?
Are you intoxicated?
It's hard to read people's questions because their intonation and like their like how they would go through the sentence is so different from what I would. So like when I read to wear hiking during, it's like it sounds different than if you read, a shirt to wear hiking during no seams. Plus, not saying this is you, Sally, but generally speaking, punctuation real lacking in these questions. There's a lot of missing commas.
That's fair. I just had to bust your chops a little bit,
This is water.
So I've been sure
Vodka.
it's vinegar. So anyways, actually I read this question earlier. It's, we have an outline just to let you guys know. It's not most of what we say is off the cuff, but we like to be somewhat prepared. So when I originally read this,
Scouts,
yes,
somewhat
always
prepared.
I was like, the perfect thing for this is monolight, right? Like that is breathable, it's bug proof, but actually as I've thought about it more from a hiking standpoint, I actually just think that you need to make like a wind shell and wind pants, because just having something that only does one thing when you're hiking kind of doesn't make sense. And all of any woven fabric, especially a calendared one, is also like going to be fine against protecting from most bugs, just like if you're wearing clothes. So you could go with something.
What kind of hiker do you think we are?
I don't know Sally, so I won't speak to what Sally does. But so yeah, you could go with like literal no-seam mesh or monolight or something, and that would be super light and breathable, and it would work. Or you could try to use some other materials to kind of get two purposes out, where maybe you block out some of the bugs, but also you have some wind resistance and a little bit of water resistance. So just something to think about there. If you were going to do some sort of like wind shell, I recommend pretty much any calendared fabric that we carry. You could get something as light as Membrane 7, which is super, super ultralight, or you could go with like our 1/1 Ripstop Nylon Calendered, which is more heavy duty, but still really soft and still pretty lightweight. So yeah, hopefully that helps, Sally. Thank you.
Okay, our next section is on sewing machines. This is from Jeffrey F. I'm interested in both developing my own backpacking gear and doing some leather work. Does it make sense to use the same machines for sewing ripstop nylon and leather, or would it be better to have two different machines optimized for the different levels of stress?
That's a great question, Jeffrey F. So I was in the exact same position before I bought my machine, because I started doing leather work before I kind of got into MYOG stuff, and I really wanted to have a machine that could do everything. But just like camping gear, that can do everything or says it can do everything, sometimes it's not really good at one thing. So I would recommend, if your budget calls for it, get something that will work separately for both. So whether that's like a heavier duty sewing machine that will work for leather, and then a lesser expensive home machine that will work for, ripstop nylon or whatever, that would be my recommendation. Because I bought a Sailrite LSZ1 because I was like, I really want to be able to sew leather and I really want to be able to sew DCF. Vastly different. Yes, I know. And it will do both. It will do both, and I've done both. But the time that it takes to go through all the settings, change out the thread for leather versus ripstop nylon or DCF, and then changing all the tension, and you have to change the tension on the bobbin too, and it's kind of a nightmare to go through all of that every time you want to sew something different. So, in the sake of being able to sew more often because you actually want to sew, I would recommend going with 2 separate machines.
There was this one weekend, I think it was a holiday weekend last summer, that Carter and I got a text from Isaac, and it was a video. I think we were together actually when it came in. We're like, oh, what is this? So we pull open this video that looks like it was shot on like the original 2004 Nokia phone.
It was actually a potato.
A big blue blob with like half a cowhide going through the sewing machine. And both Carter and I are like, so cool. What is it? And Isaac's like, I can put 4 layers of leather through my machine.
It definitely works.
It is a really cool machine, though, I will say.
Yeah. No,
it's a monster.
Once I saw the actual video, I'm like, oh, that is pretty cool. All right, our next question is from Alex. I have 0 sewing experience and recently decided to try my own project. I became completely overwhelmed at step 1 of selecting a sewing machine. I realized that no one single machine is likely to be perfect for all applications, but hopefully you can recommend 1 or 2 options that are good starting points, maybe the best economical choice, and a mid-range better choice.
Yeah, so this is an easy one. You're in luck. I can make your anxieties completely gone. I will just send you an invoice for our time together. The Singer Heavy Duty series, you can get it on Amazon. There's a 4411, a 4423, and a 4432. The suffix of those, the last 2 numbers, just means how many stitches that you have. You just need the 4411. It's a little cheaper. Go for that. We use that here at the shop. That's a machine that I've also used for a long time. It can do anything that you need. There are plenty of customers that we have that own small businesses making gear that use that machine. That is the way to go. So the Singer Heavy Duty 4411, you can make your Rainfly, your bug net combo, any of that stuff. So mesh, webbing, tree straps, all that will be totally fine. If you want the best thing you can get, you want a direct drive, Juki, fully automatic industrial machine. But I don't think
that's mid-range.
I don't know that I'd call that mid-range. But that would be...
You can find them on Craigslist sometimes.
Yeah, if you go to... Well, I'm going to get to this later, I think, but there is a website that I use for used industrial machines that's really awesome out of, I think, California. That is where I purchase my machine, and they often have some pretty cool stuff. So I'll reveal that later. But yeah, Alex, hopefully that helps. I understand what it's like to get really overwhelmed about a detail that might seem small until you're like, oh no, I need to buy a machine. Am I going to get the wrong one? Just get the machine, start sewing on it, start with one of our DIY kits that have instructions so it takes out even more of the guesswork, and you'll be good to go.
Also, for anyone else looking for a machine, if you're looking to buy used or kind of new, we do have a sewing machine buyer's guide in the Intro to DIY ebook. So go to Resources, ebook, Starter Pack, and the Intro to DIY ebook will have a couple pages there about what you need from a machine specifically, so you can feel pretty good when you purchase one. We are on to our final segment now, the other section that, a question just didn't fit into a better segment. So it's here. Plus, we really like your questions, so we wanted to get as many as possible. This question is going to be for both of you. Reddit user, It Would Be Grand, said, you've got $1,000 to build a DIY gear making Etsy studio at home. From scratch, you've got nothing. What equipment and materials do you buy with that $1,000 to kickstart your new venture? Another Reddit user, Rob Ventures, also commented and said, please don't assume that everyone can just pick up amazing secondhand gear for a good price on Facebook. So you kind of have to be creative. But let's start with you, Carter.
Thanks, Rob Ventures, for keeping us in check there. I was going to say find an industrial Juki for $3. So I'm totally glad that you...
$250.
Yeah. So I basically put what I did. So I know that it was under $1,000 because I spent under $1,000. I haven't broken this down. I mean, I think this maybe could be a cool piece of content for us to do where we actually build our list, but I'm not going to go through all that. I'll just tell you what I got and the basic prices. If it goes over $1,000, I'm sorry, but it should be pretty close. So the first thing that I would get, and I alluded to this earlier, is a used Juki machine from Zamir Sew. That's an awesome place to buy machines. You can buy a used Juki with a table that will ship with shipping for like $550. You could get one that's around $800, but I think between $500 and $600 is going to get you in a good spot to come in somewhere around $1,000 or maybe right under it, hopefully, depending on inflation and gas prices and all that stuff. Just kidding about the gas prices. You can just get one basic light from Amazon is going to be enough. So they have a magnetic one that just clips on the back of your machine. Or I guess it doesn't clip, it magnetizes to the back of it. And that's just like an LED light that you plug in. Buy a power strip from Amazon. Buy one spool of thread, the permacore thread from Amazon. That's $13. The light, I think, is also $13. A pack of extra bobbins, which is under $10. A plastic folding table from like Walmart, which should be around $30. Any chair that you have in your house, you don't need a special one just for this. Needles from Amazon. And I think that's close to it. You need a pair of scissors, you need tweezers, thread snips, and a lighter. The DIYer's toolkit, basically. And I think you're pretty much ready to make gear for Etsy. I don't think that you need... Oh, and you need a rotary cutter and a cutting mat. And I think you're under 1,000 there.
I think you're under 1,000 too. So, phenomenal list. But I also read part of his question as materials. So let's take the budget out of it briefly. If you were to choose 3 materials to start your Etsy shop, what fabrics would you choose as well?
Oh, I thought he meant materials as in well, I don't know.
I'm reading into it more. Forget the $1,000 budget. Say that was just gear. What 3 materials did you pick to start your Etsy shop? Fabric.
What do I make?
That's up to you. Just choose 3.
I don't understand what that means.
Say you're making backpacking gear, like water bottle pockets, hip belt pockets, and fanny packs.
Ultra 100 DCF tape and
the webbing. 3 fabrics. Don't worry about the details. There's 3 main fabrics: Ultra 100,
Venom ultralight mesh, and melange. That's nice. Probably over $1,000 just for those.
Don't worry about that. That was an add-on question. All right, Isaac. Now it's over to you. What would your equipment look like?
Okay, so I'd spend the most that I could on a machine. So whether that's finding something on Craigslist, Facebook, or Zamir Sew. And Rob Ventures, I fully recognize your comment, but it's definitely doable to find something on Craigslist or Facebook. You just got to look. So I'll just put that out there. And then... Yeah, so next everything would be bought on Amazon, like cutting mat, rotary cutter.
Is there anything that Carter said he would get that you would not?
Probably not the folding table from Walmart. I would probably look for something, again, on Craigslist, like an old dining room table or something like that.
You just build one out of pallets, actually.
Or you could do that.
That's what Isaac would do.
Something that's a little sturdier than one of those folding tables, just because I hate, we've had this problem in the past with the singer on the folding table, and then when you're sewing, it's like.
Well, so the reason that I hear you, but the reason that I recommended that is because the machine is going to come with a steel table. So
if it doesn't, though, if the
it
machine
should
doesn't,
do not buy an industrial machine.
Well, because not everybody's going to buy an industrial machine.
Yeah, but we're saying what would be our thing to start a studio. Yeah. But I hear you. If you can find at least even one of the folding tables that has the steel legs, you're totally right. You don't want to be rotary cutting something and then you just knock the whole. I'm trying so hard not to cuss right now, but if you knock the whole darn table over. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to stake my claim that I'm with you, but if you have your industrial machine sitting on a Walmart table. You probably shouldn't be making gear for other people. That's all I'm saying.
So, Isaac, my over-index question for you is: your Etsy shop is making fly fishing gear.
Fly fishing gear.
Yes, right. In eastern United States. So, think of the environment. 3 fabrics. What would you choose? You make accessories, but for fishing.
They have to be from Ripstop, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it'd still kind of be the same as how I would answer for any like pack or accessory thing, which would be some kind of stretchy fabric, a
Which one?
shell. Hold on, I'm getting to it.
Okay.
A stretchy fabric, a shell fabric, and a liner fabric. So the stretchy fabric would be Venom Ultralight Stretch Mesh, just because I love it.
Kind of
It's
great.
The shell fabric would probably be either VX21 or EPLX200, just because there are so many different color options. And then the liner fabric would probably be, I don't know, maybe 1.9 Ripstop in the interest of saving some money. Just because 1.9 Ripstop has lots of
options,
color options.
Yeah, I like it. Amazing question. Would it be grand, or it would be grand? And
I mean, the username is fitting. That would be grand.
That would be grand. It would be $1,000.
It would be a grand, and it would be grand to have a grand.
Dude, I'm kind of feeling bad now that I outed my source of ZamirSew.net because I'm scrolling on here and I don't want people to buy these. Like,
these are awesome.
There is a DDL 5550-7, which is fully auto, like under trimmer and everything. Auto back tack, everything for $550. Shipping's $175.
Actually, I think you misspoke before. It's not Zamir Sew. It's Zamir Sew. So it's Z-A-A-R.
It's Jazar Sewing.org.
And under trimmer sounds cool. That's really interesting.
That was actually my nickname in high school.
All right, we
Give him the under trimmer.
We need to finish these last few questions. I'm going to assign this one to you, Carter, because I think you have a lot of experience answering things like this. Carol says, are sleeping hammocks just for young folks? Do folks over 50 use them? And do their backs still work in the morning?
Yeah, I would say that this is another one of those common misconceptions because people don't know how to hang hammocks or are not using like the proper length and stuff, where they think like, oh, hammocks, like I have a bad back, I can't sleep like that. And I'm like, actually, like usually people switch over to hammocks because sleeping on the ground is more uncomfortable. It's harder to get in and out. It's just generally not as good of an experience as sleeping in a hammock once you're doing it right. I would say that I've been to a lot of different like hammock hangs and events, and I'm normally the youngest person there. I'm 26. So most of the people there are over 40 and are loving camping. Like for a lot of the people that I know, it actually got them back into camping because at a certain age, they were like, I just can't like go out on the sleeping pad and like try to get up and all that. So I highly recommend watching some of those videos from Shug and also reading some more things on Hammock Forms and maybe trying out an 11-foot hammock with a ridge line and seeing how that goes for you laying on a diagonal, because I really think that it might not always be it's usually not the lightest way to backpack, but it's by far the most comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not over 50, so I can't speak for that demographic, but I'm totally a hammock camping convert. Where like growing up in Scouts, everything was done on the ground, and like you were just expected to be miserable. So it's been really nice to learn how to hammock camp from Carter. You know, I will say hammock camping is a lot more technical. There's a lot more things you can get wrong, and it is kind of scary because, I mean, like what happened with Carter when us three went camping in February. If your underquilt fails, then you will end up with 12 heating pads on your body and feel none of them and just be dying. Literally.
That didn't happen.
No,
I'm an expert in the field.
So, you know, even with experts, things kind of can go wrong. But we also went camping last July and it was like 85 degrees. And overall, it wasn't that uncomfortable because hammock camping provides so much more air permeability and just breathability in your system. So it's a huge win in every direction, Carol. All right, our second to last question. Carol, again with the hard-hitting questions. Thank you for sending all of these in. This one's for you, Isaac. It says, what are your favorite fabrics that RBTR carries for clothing and why? I'm talking about things like shorts, wind jackets, rain pants, wind pants, insulated jackets, things like that.
Okay, so first off, we are definitely working on getting more apparel fabrics. So that's coming. Stay tuned. Things like Nylon Supplex and Polar Tech Alpha Direct and Microgrid and all that fun stuff. That'll be coming soon. Currently, for things like camp shorts, I think the best thing we probably have is 1.8 Airwave. I think that would probably be the most like close to an apparel fabric. But then for wind rain jackets, I know a lot of people use like 1.1 sil poly. So that could work really well for a wind jacket or wind pants. You just have to put in some kind of venting because it's not going to breathe at all. And then as far as, you could also use waterproof breathable.
1.4, 3.3 Ventec.
Yeah. But yeah, and then insulated jackets. I really want to make some kind of synthetic insulated jacket with like MIM tin.
It's the way to go. I have a few of those, and they're all awesome.
Yep. So yeah, those would be my selections.
All right. The final question is from, looks like username Cartero Holando.
It's my sister.
Also known as Big C.
The question, it looks like it's written for both of you, I think. Just got to be really, tough question here. If you were a wrestler, what would be your entrance theme song?
So before we answer, I want to say why I included this question. So on the original Maker Questions, the first one, the Carter Keep Your Shirt On episode, I asked Kyle this question, and he had a unique response. So I highly recommend that you go back. We can put the timestamp in here so you don't have to listen to the whole thing.
Maybe we can like edit the singing part in right here.
But Kyle has it was a very quick response, which makes me think that, knowing Kyle, he probably actually prepared very specifically for that question.
He's an organized dude.
But also, I think he just really loves that song. So I'm not going to say the song, but I recommend that you go back and listen. All right. So, Isaac, what would be your walkout song right before you suplex someone?
So this one's simply because it describes me so well. I just really identify with the song. And I'm a Little Teapot by Unknown Artist. When
Unknown Artist.
Dude, when those lyrics go, I'm a little teapot, short and stout, that's me. All day. I'm short and stout. That's me. But yeah. What about you, Carter?
Where's
that
your,
would be
where's
so
your handle?
right beside his spout, dog.
Yeah.
Dude, but I would be.
Here's my handle, here's my spout.
For those of you that are not watching this on YouTube,
You should be.
don't do it. So for me, this is a really tough one. There are a lot of songs that are super important to me, but if I had to pick one, I would probably say "Running Up That Hill" by Kate Bush. It just really embodies how I would feel at that moment. And I mean, I think that if I were to play that song, people would say that stranger things have happened. So,
yeah, and I mean, if you went into a coma during your wrestling match, that song would pull you out.
And I would actually have my wrestler name would be the Mind Flayer.
Oh, yeah.
So
mine would probably be Vecna.
Both of those are good. Jameson has never seen the show, so he's like, "What the hell are you?"
No
guys
idea what
talking
you
about?"
guys are saying right now.
That was a reference to Stranger Things.
I picked up on that.
There's a
What you
show
said.
on Netflix called Stranger Things.
So the premise of the show
Netflix?
is,
Yeah, Netflix. I know
I thought
you
that's
were
where you just send in DVDs and then you get them and you
Is that
send
like
them back.
Blockbuster?
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, that was a joke. My real answer would absolutely be. Never mind. I can't say what I was going to say. So,
All right.
Wow, what a cliffhanger.
Yeah, seriously.
I realize that I can't say our God is an
All right. So that just about wraps it up for part 2 of Ask Us Anything. This isn't an organized question, but how are your guys' community maker challenge projects going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you guys listening are anything like us, then we've done approximately 0%. I think I could maybe say I've done 5% because I've thought about it. We should get kicking on those. You guys should also get started on your Community Maker Challenge projects. Shoot us a message if you have any questions about application or tech tips or things like that. feel free to send them in because Matt from Redpaw and Logan from Thermal Lift Workshop will be joining us on the episode to talk about them. So if you want to sort of have your project reviewed by them, win a gift card or a few gift cards, go check everything out on our podcast page on the website. Until next time, thank you to everybody for sending in a question. We really appreciate every single one of these you guys sent in. I think we answered roughly 43 questions in all after these 2 parts, and we had to take a lot out, unfortunately, just for the sake of time. But thank you, everybody. Rate, subscribe, like, comment, all of the above on the podcast. Thank you for listening. Send comments through YouTube. Watch there. We appreciate every one of you.
Thank you.
Make good gear.
Drink
good beer.
Water. Bye.